All right, everyone. I see a few familiar faces there, so nice to see you, Andreas, as well. Today we are going to be talking. We have Rich Black and Romaine Pham with us from the Microsoft community, from the Microsoft product team, and we are going to be talking about enterprise planning native to Microsoft Dynamics, and we're going to be showing how BPP can be used to connect your planning across the organization from your sales, operations, finance, and HR, as well as eliminate data silos that would traditionally have cost you the ability to integrate your data, integrate your planning, and actually make real-time decisioning. And we're going to walk you through how this is changing with BPP and Dynamics and how this is going to unlock value for people who are already using F&O and want to get additional value out of the system, or for those who are excited to explore an ERP implementation with Dynamics. So with that said, I want to introduce you to the folks who are going to be speaking here. Number one, well, not number one, but number one on the list here is myself, is Khaled. I am the Managing Director of Fabric and EPM Solutions. I'm a co-founder with Alp of KINETIQ, and we focus on data analytics and planning solutions for manufacturing, distribution, and CPG companies. I have with me Alp, if you want to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Khaled. And hi, everybody. Great to see everybody here. I'm Alp, the Managing Director of Architecture and Platforms, focused on the technical end for sales and operations and supply chain planning and analytics within Microsoft BPP. Really great to see you guys. And I'll turn it over to Romaine next from the Microsoft side to intro himself.
Hey, thank you, Khaled. Thank you, Hub. Hi, everyone. My name is Romaine Pham. I'm the Senior Product Manager at Microsoft, responsible for business performance planning and everything related to budget within Dynamics. Nice to be here. And over to you, Rich.
Thank you. I'm also excited to be here. My name is Rich Black. I'm a Dynamics 365 FastTrack Solutions Architect. I work with our Dynamics 365 finance customers in finance, supply chain management, product operations on global deployments, and focus on our business performance planning feature set with Romaine and team.
Awesome. So we do have the dream team here, and we've been working together for a while. We're very, very excited now to show you the progress that the product has made, how it can add a lot of value to folks. And I want to give you a little bit of very quick context about who we are and why this will be useful to you before we dive in. So very, very quick about us. We focus on Microsoft Fabric and the Power Platform, especially for supply chain, manufacturing, operations, and enterprise planning use cases. We help folks with Dynamics F&O move their planning out of spreadsheets and back into or alongside their ERP. And finally, we've been partnering with Romaine and Rich to share this all with you for quite some time. And we are working with the Microsoft field team to accelerate the growth of BPP. So what I want to do is start with showcasing to everyone what is the gap that BPP solves, as well as where does it add the most value, where are people feeling pain that this can resolve. And then we can start talking about what that looks like in terms of the feature set that maps to this. So number one, most organizations that we've seen and worked with using F&O still do their planning, budgeting, and forecasting outside of Dynamics. So that typically looks like budgeting, forecasting, FP&A, as well as S&OP, all done in Excel, completely disconnected from their live ERP data. Every planning cycle tends to start with an export because we are using either a third-party planning solution or Excel. And that means you can't work with the data that you have actually in your ERP. You have to extract it, do the planning manually in Excel, and then re-upload back to your budget registry. And so this leaves folks working with different extracts. So finance, sales, operations, HR, and other organizations are all working with different static versions of the truth. And so the value of your ERP investment stops at the transactional level. You actually never get to materialize the value of it in your planning and forecasting in real time. And so the situation up until recently was that organizations had to choose between expensive third-party planning tools or ad hoc Excel-based planning, forecasting, and budgeting. BPP changes all of that. So to understand what this is costing organizations and why it matters is the manual consolidation that you have to do with those Excel spreadsheets costs you days every planning cycle. And it means that you're working with stale, disconnected data so that finance, sales, operations, and the different functions are working off of, they're marching in different directions. It means that the organization can't adapt quickly and adjust their forecasting in real time as the market shifts. And leadership ends up making decisions on numbers that are already out of date. And when we go into a live demo in this call, we'll showcase some of the examples where this has a material impact to people's EBITDA margins, to their revenue growth, and to their ability to serve their customers. And we can show how these gaps have actually cost companies money in the past, and showcase really how BPP as an investment helps unlock those gains. So what actually is BPP? Number one, it is a natively integrated planning solution that sits on top of and integrates directly with Dynamics 365. It helps you connect data from Dataverse from your sales, operations, finance, and other functions all in one place in the same system at the same time. It means that you don't have to do the manual exporting and reconciliation or parallel spreadsheet work. You instead get to plan in real time, quote unquote, on top of Dataverse and Dynamics. So you have one planning engine with your business logic, your numbers, and all of your functions in the same place. So that's a quick conceptual understanding of what it is we're talking about here. And what I want to do is not talk about it anymore, but actually showcase this to you. So I'm going to shift over to Alp, who's going to walk you through end to end how we can start from our supply chain, let's say our demand planning, and work all the way down through our finance and operations so that we can see an end-to-end example of how these numbers connect, what the business logic looks like, and how folks can experience a day in the life with BPP. So Alp, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Khaled. And first off, can you see my screen, guys?
Yes, sir. You're good to go.
Awesome. Appreciate it. So as Khaled mentioned before, guys, what we're going to be talking about is the integrated planning cycle, integrated business planning cycle, where we're going to be going from operational planning to financial planning and analysis. So the story I want to really show you guys within Microsoft BPP here as a demo asset example is how teams can really go from demand planning and production planning and inventory planning directly into FP&A planning. So I'll be walking you through a couple examples right here and showcasing to you how this is really augmenting the existing Dynamics F&O supply chain solution to enable scenario-based planning. So what you're looking at my screen right here, guys, is an example of a demand planning SKU level planning module that was built on top of Power BI within Microsoft Business Performance Planning. Now with this module right here, what we're really showcasing is how you can leverage all the supply chain modeling around statistical forecasting, as well as the actual units that are coming in from a sales order standpoint, and really start to do scenario-based modeling to see exactly what it looks like when you go ahead and forecast out projections of units. So this is where demand planning can really come in. That's going to feed the financial plan. So if you can imagine, I'm a demand planner right here. I can actually leverage BPP for scenario-based planning. So a really classic example we like to show right here is, well, what would happen if in the month of January, we were able to adjust our demand based on new customer intelligence that we have on here. So what we're showcasing is a screen where we have a collection of various different SKUs we're planning for as an organization. We're centralizing that planning process by doing it in one location here. And as an example, I want to go ahead and update my projection of my SKUs to 35,000. With BPP, what this gives us the ability to do is do top-down as well as bottoms-up planning. So from here, if I know what my statistical forecast is, but I have more intelligent information as to what's going on, I not only can adjust that demand, but I can also show it in real time to show those units planning. So what's going to happen here is we're going to be adjusting these values. We're going to see that real-time change, and we're going to see this affect our entire model right here, where now we're forecasting roughly 35,000 units. And on top of that, what's great about this is that we also have the ability to leave intelligent conversations for users. So in this case, I can actually come in here and add commentary as to why we're making this change in place. So this is a quick example of how we're able to do unconstrained demand forecasting directly within the BPP tool itself right here that you're seeing. So as data is coming in, as Khaled kind of mentioned before, around F&O data and other data sets feeding into BPP, where users can plan from Power BI directly, we're now going to be able to update our decisions, but we're also going to see how that's going to affect versus our statistical forecast to see how much different we are compared to that forecast as actuals are coming in. Another quick example right here is how teams are also going to be able to plan, which is through graphical planning. So if I wanted to instead use a graphical planning, look, I'm going to have the option to do that well. And what this is going to allow us to do is do a top-down forecast either around one SKU or all SKUs. So this is giving teams flexibility to centralize their planning and perform their operational planning directly from BPP itself. So as we're doing this right here, and as we're making our assumptions around what our unit-based forecasts are going to be, as a manufacturing supply chain company, we can immediately see those results change. And then from there, start to make some assumptions around what that price and cost plan is going to look like. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to flip over to our price and cost planning module right here, where we're going to showcase, now that we have the units in place that we plan, let's go ahead and do those price projections and cost projections as to what that's going to look like on here. So this is where teams can actually start to plan out their price and cost planning. So the advantage here is that we can do scenario-based units planning. And on top of that, we're also going to have the capability to be able to do price planning. So if I wanted to, for example, use BPP, where we have the capability to use driver-based columns to plan out our price and cost assumptions, I can go ahead and plug those right in. What's great about BPP is we have entry shortcuts which allow us to do quick price projections of our various different products in our example right here. So if I come in and I go ahead and enter in that we're going to have a price projection of roughly $30 per week for this particular SKU, I can enter that, and this can update my revenue projections right here. So as you're seeing, as I'm going through this right here, I'm a demand planner. I'm in charge of essentially going through the demand plan unit process. And now I'm coming in here and doing my price projections as somebody who's in charge of the pricing costs for all various different products across my organization. So this is giving me the capability to set my operational plan of what we're actually going to need to accomplish this given year based on the demand that we're seeing. And what we're gearing up for right here is the ability to take all these assumptions and use this as our starting point for the financial plan. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Khaled, any color you want to add on this one just before I jump over to the FP&A side as we're going to this IBP cycle example right here?
I think there are a couple of exciting options for people to think about when they are figuring out how this can apply to their organization. We'll start with number one, if we can go back to the demand planning screen for a second. Firstly, BPP integrates directly with BPA as well as your supply chain module within Dynamics. So you can actually start your demand plan from a machine learning based forecast. There are a number of different forecasting methodologies, but the point is you can actually use AI and machine learning to forecast out what your demand will be by given SKUs, and then make adjustments based on what your sales and field team is aware of, because they're having conversations with clients and customers. So you get the best of both worlds. You have something informed by statistics and ML, but real world conversations are driving your forecast at the end of the day. So that's number one. You can actually blend these capabilities with what is already available in demand planning within Dynamics. Number two is because we can do fast scenario modeling here, this gives different functions within the organization the ability to model out things that are relevant to their domain, with the results, as Alp will show you in a minute, with the results cascading to the other functions. So sales can have a conversation about a customer order that they want to fulfill, maybe a large order in a coming month. And that will trickle down to the operations and production folks who can go and figure out how to fulfill that, and to the finance folks who will understand the ramifications of it. Now, the other thing that's exciting here, if you want to go to the price and cost planning, is that we get to do scenario modeling on top of things that are already in Dynamics without changing or messing with your master data. So back in Dynamics, you have your product management module, where you can do things like create your bill of materials, your standard costing assumptions, pricing assumptions, and so on. However, we've talked with folks in the past where, as they do a larger volume of business, they actually are able to negotiate discounts versus what their standard costs are today. And so we can manipulate those assumptions going forward to see what the impacts are going to be across their margins by different products, channels, or customers. So the beauty of having this by the cubes that are underlying these this write back here is that we can go and figure out what assumptions we want to modify and validate those assumptions against live data. And this goes back to what I was talking about before when I was setting up Alp for this demo, where when you are planning away or apart from your actuals data, you can't tie it to understand, well, how did my actual costs compare to my assumptions in here, and what were the drivers of any variance of it. So I want everyone to just keep in mind those assumptions that we're seeing output in here from pricing and costing, as well as a lot of other assumptions we can get to when we get into finance, from accounts payable and accounts receivable and their impact to cash flow. You'll start to see all of these come together so that we have one playground or one sandbox for the different teams to make decisions while being aware or intelligent to the fact that every decision made in one function affects everybody else, and we have a complete end-to-end picture. So I just wanted to connect that and give it back to you, Alp. If you can show everybody, I think you're about to go into this scenario item as well, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly showcase this as well too. So the beauty about this right here is that we do have the option to be able to run scenario analysis, where we can essentially start to show our various different statistical forecasts by various different ways. So maybe we want to show by month and by week, what our assumptions look like across the board. This is going to be where teams can actually model out and see exactly what that looks like. So one great thing about Power BI augmented with BPP is that we can do something called what we call structured flexibility, where you have the capability to change your view based on exactly how you want to show it. So as an example, I can show by time, by either year, month, or week, what my various different assumptions look like across scenarios. I can also choose the various different options of various different calculations that I want to use for my analysis right here. So this gives you a complete flexibility to be able to change between scenarios, as well as look at them side by side to see exactly what that change looks like. So this is that scenario modeling piece that Khaled was alluding to, that I was alluding to here. And the beauty about this is all this data right here, thanks to the capability of connected planning within Dataverse and BPP, allows you to feed this data into the financial planning process as a starting point. So rather than finance coming up with their own assumptions, they're taking exactly what the demand planning team, the operations, the supply chain teams are putting together from an assumption standpoint as their starting point for their financial planning analysis process. So what I want to do really quick is I want to flip to now our FP&A demo asset, where we can move that data essentially now into the FP&A planning process on here. So how exactly is that happening? Well, number one, the beauty about Microsoft Business Performance Planning is it is on top of the Power Platform. So what that means is we can take full advantage of some of the tool capabilities like data flows, for example. And what data flows are going to allow us to do is move data in and out with the right workflows and approvals in place, thanks to Power Automate, so that we can take this data as a starting point for the financial planning process. So as the teams start to finish up that demand planning assumption process, run their scenarios, they can take their final scenario submission that's needed for the budget and forecast and use that as a starting point for the finance teams. And then this is where finance can layer on their assumptions, their logic as a starting point. Are there any sort of discounts that need to be applied to some of these assumptions? Is this truly what we're going to be able to hit on here? Are there any sort of changes that we need to make to these driver-based assumptions that the demand plan team has submitted? This is where you start to blend in the operational plan with the financial plan as well. So as an example right here, taking that same unit and price assumptions that we had before, we can feed that as a starting point for the financial planning process. And then the FP&A teams can go here from a centralized perspective and start to make changes to the plan based on new information they know in regards to the field right here. So this is where I can actually start to make adjustments, such as maybe the amount of units that we thought we were going to do, which was around 30,000, is actually 25,000. So everything is building off of one another. We have a starting point for the original plan, and then we're going ahead and making adjustments to that plan as a result of new information we're learning. And then that starts to become the true revenue forecast that everybody is in line to from both a financial and operational plan perspective. So you're seeing me here just make a couple different changes. The idea is that everything is connected and we're able to move from one part of the process to the other. Now this is right here the revenue driver-based planning assumptions we're making, where we're able to change the revenue forecast impact. But there's a whole lot more that the FP&A team can do from here. So based on inventory assumptions as well as cost assumptions, those can also be fed into this process right here, changing the adjustments to what the plan looks like. And then from there, the FP&A team can carry out their planning process. So in this case, that might be going into OpEx planning, where they have to go ahead and make some operational plan assumptions around what their costs are going to look like. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and start to do my operational plan from an OpEx perspective, where I'm going to go ahead and start to make some adjustments to what my OpEx plan is going to look like. So from here, we have our revenue assumptions that came in from the operational plan. I can now come in here to start to adjust my OpEx planning by adjusting my numbers either at a top-down or a bottoms-up level for my accounts and my departments. So as before, I can go ahead and use other sort of functions like here, for example, being able to increase my OpEx by 10%, or based on new information I learn, start to adjust the rest of my plan for the rest of the year as we're starting to move through our forecasting process. So everything here is starting to build upon one another, where we go from our demand plan from a revenue standpoint now to our OpEx plan from an operating expenses standpoint, starting to build our profit and loss statement and eventually get to our cash flow statement here. So as the OpEx plan starts to finish up right here, as teams are centralizing their planning process, they're moving all their department assumptions into BPP directly within here and seeing those changes happen in real time. We can start to move now to our P&L reporting. So as all the data starts to come in, we finalize our workflows right here. We start to move into our profit and loss planning, where we can essentially start to move into looking at our data and our results, and then starting to add commentary on top of that. So this is where we start to introduce another capability of BPP, which is the reporting visual. And the great thing about the reporting visual here is we're actually able to build out our financial reporting processes and start to have a real profit and loss statement with calculated rows for our profitability calculations like gross profit, operating profit, and net profit directly within the system. So on here, this is where we can start to look at the data, start to understand different scenarios and compare them to one another, such as a base case versus a optimistic or pessimistic scenario directly within the same landing platform right within here. So as an example right here, I can actually come in and start to add commentary. So if I wanted to go ahead and add a comment as to what's affecting our revenue right here, I can go ahead and do so. So I can write a comment in here, and the beauty about this is that we're actually able to go ahead and put comments in place that will allow us to be able to change our commentary and have that directly added right here to showcase why exactly these numbers are changing, actuals versus our base case or last year, for example. So this is where reporting and planning start to blend together. This is where various different departments are all interacting together to do connected planning within one ecosystem. Kyle, I'm going to pause here for a second just for you to add some color on here if there's any sort of input you want to chime in on this one before I get into some of the workflow control that the team can also experience in here as well.
Yeah, 100%. So there's a few things here that are important for everyone to understand, and that they can show how the different functions who are involved in planning can actually kind of come together and interact. So number one, if you're looking on Alp's screen right there, you see that he has in one column actuals and the other one base scenario. So this goes back to what we had been talking about in the previous slides, which is about how we are connecting directly to F&O. So your Dataverse data behind the scenes, you're getting that data in real time. So this is as of the last update, you have your actuals and you can compare it to your forecast. So for these folks, we can actually identify, how are we performing on a week to date, month to date, quarter to date, or year to date basis. We can also adjust our forecast in real time simply by going through the workflow that Alp had talked about. And where there is a variance, we can put commentary so that folks have context on what is driving that variance. And we can also start to pick apart what is driving it. So one of the things that we see a lot of is we work with folks where they are doing their forecasting and they need to understand why there's a variance between their projected EBITDA and what actually happened. Now, the beauty of doing the driver-based forecasting that Alp is talking about and tying it to your actuals all in one place is that I can go and do something like a PVMC analysis, which tells me, is my margin off because the EBITDA margin that I ended up having because I priced things differently than I had forecast, and that can go back to Alp's pricing assumptions back on the demand planning side. Is it because of the volume that I sold? Did I not sell as much as I thought? Is it the mix? I sold different products than I anticipated selling. I sold more of a cheaper product than my more premium or expensive products. Or were my costs higher than my standard costing assumptions that I went in with? And that is all information for the business to make smarter decisions to protect margin down the road. Number two, we can get into things like cost allocations, which is exciting because when we are running multiple programs, SKUs, and products across different channels, we need to know what is our full cost to serve. And we can actually get, because we're using that data from Dynamics, we can actually get that data in one place and compare it to our assumptions. And we can go and figure out what is our fully loaded cost to serve, what is our actual contribution margin for products. And we've worked with customers in the past who they kind of identified that they weren't actually as profitable as they thought they were once they had connected this data to their planning. Their actual costs were a little higher. And so being able to tie together that information, that actuals and your assumptions in one place without having to do versioning up of spreadsheets and do it across functions from functions that might not normally be able to easily communicate with each other if they're just using separate data sources and spreadsheets. We also have seen it impact things where we can control master data from here. And that's really exciting because we get to control in BPP assumptions. And those assumptions are very important because we can go and model out what would it look like if we changed our accounts receivable terms or payable terms. How would that impact our cash flow? We can also model out what different volumes would do to our unit economics, like we talked about with modifying our cost assumptions, our pricing assumptions. And so we can actually drive EBITDA growth, protect our cash flow and margins, and explain and understand why there were any variances so that we can improve the performance of the business over time. So I think those are really just important concepts to drive home because those are the kinds of problems that usually slip through the cracks when you have disconnected planning. When you have folks using different tools and functions are kind of siloed from each other, these problems slip through the cracks because no one truly owns them and no one has the full visibility they need to actually impact them. So I wanted to give it back to you, Alp, but I think these are some of the most common things we've talked to folks where they really wanted to know, can we close those gaps with this tool? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue also just into control and workflows, where the last piece that we wanted to show you guys just on our demo asset right here is essentially around how you can control the status in terms of where exactly plans are at, as well as control workflow approvals in place so that you know when something has been fully approved, and then that can be locked down as the final committed budget or forecast that has been submitted for the planning process right here. So just a quick example right here that I'm showcasing is a home that's essentially just showcasing where exactly the status is of each planning module. We talked about revenue planning, OpEx planning, workforce planning, CapEx planning as all core financial planning components that are needed for a P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. And really the beauty about this in terms of having the centralized status control right here is that you can see exactly where all the statuses are at for a plan. You can also know what has been approved and what has not been approved, thanks to the capability of BPP's table edit, enabling you to be able to change these values and lock them down directly within the same centralized ecosystem. Now, it might sound small, but a big challenge that we see a lot of clients also dealing with is knowing exactly where the planning process is, especially when there's multitudes of various different individuals participating in the planning process, and you want to make sure that everybody is submitting their plans entirely. So from here, we can request approvals. You're also going to have the capability to leverage Power Automate for being able to lock down those requests and change values, as well as put security in place. And then also the capability to be able to change statuses directly from the same ecosystem here. So I can use drop-down selections, and as well as the other team members from a security standpoint can see their drop-down selection values to be able to see exactly where the statuses are and then be able to change them so that when somebody comes in to review here, such as the reviewer or the manager of the entire process, they can see exactly where the planning process is directly within real time right here. So that's really the great capability of BPP. It's also a way to control workflows as well as the statuses of where exactly the plans are at. So you're getting that full ecosystem, not only between everybody being able to connect in one place to be able to do their planning process, but having submissions flow through and get locked down thanks to BPP's security and workflow capability. So this is just a quick example of how, in this case, demand planning is being fed as a starting point for the financial planning process for an IBP planning cycle right here. So Khaled, I'm going to turn it over back to you just on the slide deck on here. just so that we can start to go through some of the other content for the team here.
Yep. Just before I get back to slides, I wanted to share with everyone, there are two common questions we get when we share these demo assets. And the most common ones we get are, number one, do we only get these modules out of the box? And the answer to it is no. With BPP, you can really configure anything you want, because effectively what we're doing, and we'll get into architecture in a minute, is you're operating between inputs, business logic, and outputs based on any sort of business planning or forecasting that you have. So we've seen use cases across HR, fleet management, CapEx, balance sheet reporting, and a lot more, because all of them can operate on that input out business logic output sort of function. And so if you can define the business logic that you need, and you can figure out, or you can explain how it connects to the other functions within the business, you can build it out. And the beauty of, again, we'll get into architecture in a moment, but the beauty of it is that we are using the Microsoft Power Platform as the back end. So unlike other third-party EPM tools, you're not necessarily locked into something that is a bit of opaque or a black box to your team. If you have Power Platform capabilities, you can configure and extend and modify your logic. And that extensibility and integration with the rest of the Power Platform is something I'll share in the slides when we get back into them. The second question we get a lot of is, because we've mentioned Dataverse and Alp showed you actuals data flowing from Dynamics, a lot of folks have asked, does that mean, I can't use my data from other source systems? And the beauty, again, of the Dataverse, and as well as using Power BI in your front end, is you get to leverage your, number one, your entire data ecosystem, because you're using Power BI as your front end, which other third-party EPM tools don't give you the flexibility to do. And number two, you can marry this up quite nicely with your other data and BI investments across Microsoft Fabric and beyond. So if you have already built out analytics sitting on top of other CRM systems or any other data that is feeding into your BI ecosystem, you can still marry that up. And this isn't a third-party solution. You marry that up to what you've already built out, so that you're making planning on informed decisions and informed data that's coming directly out of your existing data engineering and platform investments. Alp, anything you wanted to add to those common questions we get when we share these? Or I can go back to...
No, I think it's great comments, and I can start to chime in on the architecture side when we get into those slides on there.
You got it. All right. So I just want to recap for everyone what we just saw before we continue. One, it is one planning module that is driven by business drivers, not static line items that people are entering into a spreadsheet. And you saw that where Alp was showcasing, he's able to act or put the hat on of a demand planner, someone in operations and production, really on the manufacturing side of things, someone in finance, sales, HR, and so on. But we're all running back to the same backend, that same data model. And because we have that shared data model, it means we can build and compare scenarios in minutes, not weeks, because we can version up that data and give folks a new playground, a new sandbox for them to model out different assumptions without having to chase down spreadsheets and share them across the organization. Because we have the built-in governance that Alp was showcasing for everyone, we can make sure that people only have access to the right data and information. So Alp can only see his cost center, I can only see mine, for example. But on top of that, we can do end-to-end approvals and workflow to make sure that all of our planning and forecasting is done on time, and that budgets are approved by the appropriate person before we go into the new fiscal year or quarter, or however your forecasting cycle looks. And the beauty is that all of that sits on top of the ERP you've already invested in. So you get to leverage the Microsoft Power Platform to extend the value of something you already have or something you're exploring. Before I talk too much, I want to share the mic with Rich and Romaine. Now, we already introduced them in the beginning of the webinar, but I wanted to share, of course, that they'll talk to us a little bit about some of the early success stories they're already seeing. and they can give us a sneak peek of the things that are on the roadmap and on the radar for BPP. So Rich and Romaine, if you guys could just share some of what we're talking about and how it's sort of impacted real world customers. We'd love to hear you talk about that, and then tell us a little bit of a sneak peek of what's coming.
Hey, thank you, Khaled. And yes, we're excited to share some of the momentum that is gathering with business performance planning, and um, and what we have here, right, is, as you explained, is a tool that builds upon the existing investment in Dynamics 365 and the Microsoft ecosystem by leveraging direct integration with Dynamics 365 Finance and tools that customers and partners are already using throughout their organization, including Power Automate and, of course, Power BI. You're able to over a flexible solution that can be adapted to fit your needs, as you explained, beyond the templates that are available. A customer's individual unique planning process can be accommodated with a data model and a Power BI dashboard and a Power Automate workflow solution that truly fits their needs and is extensible and flexible there.
Talking about extensibility and flexibility, Rich, can you tell us a little bit about how folks, because we have a slide on this in a moment, how folks are getting value out of things that are already in Dynamics, like demand planning, and using that to accelerate the value that they can unlock, or how they can use that to accelerate, I should say, the value they unlock from BPP itself?
Yeah, definitely. And we do have a customer success story that is published out on our Microsoft customer success story website, where we have one of our early adopters of business performance planning who did exactly that. They also adopted our supply chain focused demand planning product, and they're using the sales order history in demand planning to generate that machine learning based forecast for product demand in the demand planning tool, and using the outputs from demand planning, directly integrating that into business performance planning so that they get additional insights as to the financial impacts of those demand changes, and they can perform what if scenario modeling on different aspects of that financial results of that demand. And so by leveraging demand planning alongside business performance planning, they're getting much quicker insight into their potential budgets, creating new budgets, and making changes visible to their planning personnel in near real time.
I've read
We
that
can
customer.
also.
Oh, good.
Oh, sorry. And I was going to say, and we also are integrating both of these products more closely with our business performance analytics dashboard, which it provides the out-of-the-box analytics reporting tool, complete with a data model and an ingestion capability that is standard with Dynamics 365 Finance. That analytics tool is included in the Dynamics 365 Finance license. And so with business performance planning, we can leverage that BPA data model in the very next release of business performance planning with a connector that we've built.
So there's two things I took away from that are, I think, pretty exciting. One, for that customer success story, I think it's very impactful for folks where before finance basically got left holding the bag for a lot of, not just that organization, just generally, where there are silos between what's going on the commercial side of the organization, where they want to forecast out demand, and what the financial implication is going to be. And finance no longer has to wait for that information. It sounds like they can just use that directly because they're all looking at the same picture in real time, right? That's for you, Rich.
Right.
Yes. I think the other thing from what you mentioned, connecting BPA is exciting because we talked about how we're using the front end of Power BI here and how you get to leverage your already existing investments in BI and analytics. That's exciting when you want to go and you have the appetite to go and build out more of your reporting and analytics and integrate it with what you've already got. But it also means that using BPA, you can kind of leverage things that are out of the box as well. So you get the best of both worlds of things that come pre-configured and your own configurability and extensibility that you can take in-house. And I think that's exciting for teams who want a fast start and then they want to expand and build on it later. So you get a faster time to value. I did want
Absolutely.
to shift to, go ahead.
The one piece that I'll add there is that that is the real value of business performance analytics. And anytime we talk about an analytics initiative, or often a planning initiative or a reporting initiative with customers, one of the first tasks that that comes to mind is building out or recreating a data warehouse, and that is overkill. That's not necessary with the existing, with being able to leverage this existing investment with business performance analytics, because the data model is already there. You can hit the ground running and work with reports that are are available to you right out of the box there. We can, of course, extend those further. And then again, with the newly introduced connector for BPP, we have direct access to that already existing data model. So you don't have to start any one of these planning initiatives with recreating a data warehouse from scratch.
I think that's huge because it makes things move faster, but you also just reduce the cost of an implementation as well. Did you guys want to share a little bit of a sneak peek? I know we'll be talking more about in the coming slides on the AI capabilities that will be baked into BPP, but a little bit of a sneak peek of what that looks like and what's the biggest and most exciting things that you guys have on the roadmap that you'd want people to just be aware of. This might be for Rich, it might be for you as well, Romaine or Romain.
Yeah, so this one I'd like to queue up Romaine to speak to a little bit about, of course, we're very excited about AI, but for business performance planning, where are the use cases that we see the most value, and what are we focusing our efforts on for the upcoming releases? Romaine, can you speak to that a little?
Yes, sorry. Yes, so regarding the roadmap, so like recently where our effort has been focused on is what you've Alp and Khaled has been presenting, is kind of showing you that demo asset, that kind of that framework on how to leverage business performance planning in specific planning scenarios and how things could look like. Again, that's for inspiration and show you how we leverage the entire platform to meet your needs. And as has been emphasized a lot by all of the different speaker, is business performance planning is flexible. So, and that's one of the feedback we got. That's what was part of the early success we had with some of our customer. That flexibility they really enjoy, and they were able to adapt the platform to all of their needs. While we had other side of the coin where people were struggling to say, where do I start? Because I feel like I don't know how to put that into perspective and so on. So we've been working on that, on showing you more framework and how things can look like for you to get started quickly. And as we got off the rest of the year, and what we're planning to do is we basically, our objective is how to make planning and analytics much more simple and straightforward than what exists today on the market. And it help you while you start maybe with a simple problem, but then you just feel, oh, it's so easy to make, and then you can do more things, more complex, and you kind of get into the platform and all of the things it's possible. So we're really aiming at making it more and more accessible. And for that, so we are working right now on, first of all, still improving our integration with the ERP. So the connector is part of that. But as well, planning is a different exercise than analytics, and there is certain dimensions that are required for planning, such as the time series, scenarios for comparing, and so on. And we want to take off that cognitive load of how to plan with that, especially for newer people that coming on the area of planning, that they don't have to think of it. So we are working today on system managed dimensions. So dimension that will be required for planning, and you don't have to think about it. We're just gonna suggest you and give you the right fit for what you want to achieve. As well, what we want to provide you is ready-to-go templates where you could just simply say that I want to start with my OPEX, and then we just ask you a few questions, and where you would be able to get not only a data model for planning, but as well ready-to-go Power BI reporting, where you could already start directly consuming your own data coming from F&O for specific planning area. And then as we got of AI, we want to leverage AI not for the sake of AI, but really for simplifying how you get started with planning, and then how do you maintain and evolve and scale your model. So really that's where our focus is, because we believe that's a model that just gives you, that cannot scale with your organization change and cannot scale with all of the process that this new solution involve. Whatever it does on the side, like insight and stuff, if it doesn't evolve, the model doesn't evolve, if all of the data you want to use and inject and so on and want to leverage, if it cannot evolve in a simple manner, then whatever insight you can get will stay limited. So we want to have a model and an AI that can help you not only getting more insights, but as well helping you scaling your model, because we understand that when you're getting started, it's not going to be the same as where you will hand and all of the things you're going to learn along the way with that solution, and the things you can do, and as your business evolve as well. So yeah, go ahead, Khaled.
No, Romaine, I just wanted to recap for everyone. So it sounded to me like, number one, there are going to be some configurations where standard dimensions will already be created for you, just accelerating how fast people can get value out of building solutions. Number two, it sounds like we'll have down the road a co-pilot helper in building out our models and talking to our models effectively to understand how we can actually do scenario modeling quicker and get insight out of it faster, right?
Exactly. So yeah, exactly. And that's what we want to do. And as part of AI and Copilot and agent is how then your agent can help you create the best model, and then for him to be able to work on your behalf on that model, because it will start from there as well. And we don't expect you to know how to build the best agent model. We're supposed to tell you how to do that based on your requirement. You should not be an expert of that. So again, that's how to make it more accessible and more efficient than ever.
I love it. And Alp and I and the team are very, very excited to see where this goes. Just to make sure we stay on track with time, because we are almost there, I want to recap everything we just talked about, and then we can get into some of the architecture components. So number one, BPP is your planning and forecasting engine. Everything is about inputs, business logic, and outputs, and it leverages the Microsoft Power Platform to complete that loop. And the outputs are directly displayed in your existing BI and analytics toolkit. That's number one. Number two, it connects directly to things like out-of-the-box reporting and analytics like BPA from Dynamics, as well as other items like machine learning forecasts from demand planning. And basically, it is becoming more and more tightly integrated with the Dynamics ecosystem so that nothing stands alone. You have a connected view from end to end, from demand planning all the way down to finance or any other combination of planning functions that you would need. As Rich and Romaine alluded to, the product will be expanding to make modeling a lot easier and faster, and to help you get insight out of it quicker using AI, but also just expanding its integrations as well as some of its native capabilities. I'm going to shift to Alp for a second to tell everyone a little bit about how this makes your life easier and how it connects to the Power Platform, and how it'll help your budgeting and forecasting process move a little smoother.
Yeah, and just one thing to also add to the AI assisted piece as well. This is all going to be built on top of the Dataverse and Power Platform, guys. So that means you're getting the Microsoft ecosystem at your disposal on here, not only to be able to help modeling quicker for the actual BPP implementation itself, but also for being able to chat with that data and have all your data within one location. So that ecosystem is really going to make a huge impact in being able to scale and really have more and more data, both used for reporting and planning, in one place for your users to be able to interact with. Now we're looking at a sample architecture diagram right here, guys. I just wanted to give you a quick insight into really what's happening right here. And the first piece I want to start with is, of course, on the left-hand side, Dynamics 365 F&O. You heard Rich and Romaine talk about how BPA is coming out, is going to be having a connector in place, making it easier to be able to pull out dimensions, as well as other data sets that would be used as a starting point for business performance planning. But the great part about business performance planning is not only will you be able to connect to your Dynamics data, but you can also integrate other data sets as well. I want to give a quick example just from a client that we had before that was asking this exact question. What they were asking was, hey, for our operational drivers, that's actually something that's coming from our CRM system. Can BPP be able to connect to that? And the answer is yes. The beauty about data flows in here is that you're going to have the capability not only to connect to Dynamics, but also other data sources, like, for example, CRM systems and other bespoke data sources that might be required to be centralized and a starting point for your planning process. As that data starts to come into business performance planning, which is the large purple box that you're seeing right there, that's really Dataverse in a nutshell. So Dataverse is where all the data is being housed for business performance planning. So all your data is going to be located within Dataverse. And then as your users are going to start to plan via Power BI, that data is going to be written back to Dataverse. So whether I'm a demand planner, I'm on the operations side, I'm on the supply chain side, or on the finance side, all that data is going to the same centralized location, which both is used for centralization of data for reporting and planning, but also for AI to be able to leverage that data for conversational chatting and write back in the future as that comes on the roadmap. And last but not least, all the way on the right-hand side, we have the reporting. This is where your planners are going to be able to interact with Power BI reports. So especially for companies that already are utilizing Power BI, this is going to be a great win because if your users are already familiar with these tools, this is just now adding on an additional capability for those users needing to be involved in the planning process. So as we know, Power BI is used for reading the news. What BPP is helping to do is change that into a capability where you can also write the news as well. And as that data starts to be compiled into one location where you have all your budgeting and planning data, your scenario modeling happening, once you have your finalized budget and forecast submissions, this is where you can take advantage of BPP's new Cube Preview capability, which allows you to be able to write data back directly to Dynamics F&O into the budget registry. So the entire ecosystem allows you to take data out and augment that data within business performance planning for scenario analysis, but also bring that data back into Dynamics 365 F&O, the budget registry, so that you have your finalized budget that can be used for management reporting. So that's really the ecosystem in a nutshell right here in terms of how data is coming into BPP and how data is being sent back to F&O for the finalized budgeting process right here.
Love it. And that fulfills the promise of closing the loop that we talked about in the beginning. We mentioned that there's a big gap that people have historically navigated around, and this is how we close that gap. So I want to shift over to Q&A, and I know we don't have a great deal of time. So I'll also share that we have a link here, and we will be sharing some resources with attendees so that you can get in contact and you can also learn a little more about some of those success stories that Rich was talking about. But I do want to open up for Q&A and just check in if anyone has something they'd like to learn about, or if Rich or Romaine want to bump any other information you would like the community to know about. If not, they...
Yep.
Good to go?
Go ahead, Rich.
Oh, it's good to go. Let's dive into any questions.
Yeah.
I do not see any additional ones. I think we're good to go, guys.
Romaine, I actually have one question for you,
Yeah.
just on the latest with the BPA connector. So I know we spoke about this a little bit, but the first plan is going to be to be able to connect to those core financial dimensions, right? And then would the second part of the roadmap be really to be able to connect to that fact data as a starting point for a planning process?
Yeah. So for first step will be effectively that connector that give you access to all of the table that is being built by Business Performance Analytics for powering their report. So what's gonna do is that a customer that doesn't have Fabric, doesn't want that Fabric, or doesn't yet, or not mature yet for Fabric, but still wants to leverage the data from F&O, that will be the go-to to be able to build their model directly from F&O data without to have to do all of the work, as you said, of data warehousing. And then they can consume immediately those data. So yeah, that will be, so what BPP will do is basically give you access to all of those tables. You select your fact tables, and then we automatically select all of the related dimensions for you to slice and dice that we see that are available for that fact table. And then you will be able to select all of the financial dimensions that you're using today to kind of identify all of the fact that is being made for your GL or for your different fact table that you have there. And what we are studying at the moment, and that is our in our backlog, and something we're thinking about is how do we give you access, because this connector will basically help you to create those tables in Dataverse. So we will take those data, aggregate it at the granularity you need, and then move it to Dataverse. But second step is we know that people, when they plan, as you said, they need to sometimes for the analytics, because planning analytics comes together. They simply don't need maybe only planning data, that granularity. They might need data, more history of data at a more granular level. And that's something we are currently thinking about is how do we give you access to those data without needing to switch between reports, and then basically be able to inject those in, not in Dataverse because we don't want to duplicate, but be able to access those directly from the Power BI report that you're going to use for planning. And that will go through, that's something we are studying at the moment. And hope the evaluation will then quickly come through, and then we'll be able to give you those access much more simpler than having to rebuild everything via a virtual entity, which is today the way to go, is basically building your virtual entity in F&O and then connecting with Dataflow. Is we're evaluating how we either make that simpler or how we build maybe a different approach to give you access to those data more simpler.
Yeah, and I know for the technical folks, that's going to be a huge win, going from virtual entities to that connector on there. So excited to see that coming, and appreciate the update on the roadmap there and what we can expect. Yeah.
So again, what we're really aiming at is how we make things more simple. So how we give you access to your data in a more simple way. So integration, how we make you able to configure your security and your workflow in a more simple way, and then help you as fast and natural as possible to build the model that's going to help you make your assumption, make your scenarios, make your plan, answering question, and then be able to track and see, okay, when we are deriving, when we need to redo reallocations. So really go and at the essence of it, and how do we make those things simpler, because it can quickly get hairy. And that's what we believe is many platforms at the beginning, they make it look simple, but then once you start to have more process and so on, it's getting very difficult and very hard. And that's why then it's becoming a big monolith EPM that never moves. And then that's not the kind of mistake we want to make. So
fantastic. Awesome.
I love it. Guys, we are at time. Definitely enjoyed the conversation. And of course, for anyone who does want to learn a little bit more, you can get in contact with our team or with Rich and Romaine, and we'll be happy to walk you through a little bit about how this can work for your organization or your clients. That's it from me. Alp, what about you?
No, that's all. And just a special thanks to Rich and Romaine for being on this call with us to co-host. We really appreciate it. And thank you for the insights, as always, into what's happening on the roadmap and where we're going with BPP.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Khaled. Thank you, Alp. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, great event, great conversation. And looking forward to hear from you folks that's trying a BPP and want to achieve more.
Thank you all.
Rich and Romaine. Appreciate you guys.
Alrighty. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.